Well, hi there and welcome back to Northlight Photographic Workshops. And welcome to part 3 of the series that I've been working on taking this image of Patti Smith all the way from the original negative through digitizing it, all the way down, all the way through making a digital negative onto making proof prints. And now comes the most exciting part, is going to be making the larger negative and then making the final large print. So if you remember when last I left you in the last part 2, if you can see that up here now if you've missed it. We ended up making 2 proofs of the image, and the first one ended up becoming a little bit flat, and then I kicked up the contrast a little bit by compressing the levels a little bit by adding a levels correction level layer. Now, this is the image over here that you can see that I've worked out. Now, this was the original image that I corrected, and then I sized it down to make a smaller negative to make the proof print. So what I've done is I've gone back to the original size here, and I'm going to resize it again. Image size, I'm going to set it at we're going to go for 10 by 10 inches on this one now, and same DPI of 300, and I'm going to say OK. Now I've got the larger image here, and then what I've got to do is I've got to invert this image. Adjustments, invert, and then I'm going to want to rotate that image horizontal, because I want to, I'm going to take the emulsion to the emulsion on the negative itself, so I have to flip it over, otherwise I'm going to have a backwards print. So then I'm going to save this as, let's see, file, let's save a copy, and I'm going to save that on my computer. And I'm going to save it as Patti Smith. Let's go with Patti 1995 10 by 10, and we will save that as a TIFF image, non-compressed. All right, now we're ready to go. Now what I'm going to do now is take that over to Print Tool. Now, because I'm printing this one on a bigger sheet, I'm going to have to print a bigger negative, a bigger sheet of substrate. So I'm going to use a 13 by 19 sheet. And so I've got this sized in Print Tool for a 13 by 19. And what I want to do is just add that print in here. The 10 by 10, here we go. It's right in the center. I'm going to lift it up a little higher on the sheet. So what's going to happen, there's going to be a lot of extra space on the top and on the bottom, but that's okay. I'll trim that off afterward before we take it into the negative, take it into the dark room and mask the negative from there. So anyway, let's run the print. We're going to go with our, let's go to layout, quad tone rip. I've got my correction curve correctly in there. Paper size correctly. So we're going to run the print. Let's go. So let's go back into the darkroom after I get this printed out, and I'll take it from there. All right? Okay. Success. We've got our negative. It printed out no problem, and as expected, it looks exactly like our small proof negative. So without a doubt, it's going to print out the same way, and unless there's something else about it that I don't like, this should be the finished print. So what I like to do, unlike the prints that we did before, let's see, my finished proof print, and I like clean borders. For the proofs, I don't want to go through all the hassle of making a mask out and that kind of thing, but I do like a clean border, and there's many reasons for that. I don't mind seeing them, but to me, it's a lot of wasted space and a lot of wasted material. So, but I know a lot of people like that kind of proof shot, that that it's an alternative process print, that kind of thing. But personally, I like to have a nice clean border, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Now I'm going to show you in a little less detail than I do in another video that I have up here that I'll link right now on masking your papers. But in this one I use a slightly different tape than I used to use in that. And as a matter of fact, this tape was brought to my attention by one of my YouTube viewers. And it is a Scotch tape. I believe the number is 3441. It's the low tack artist tape if you're looking for it. But it's not pulled up an emulsion over, not pulled up a sizing off a paper for me yet. So I really do like this stuff. Now, that's what I use for the paper. For the actual negative itself, I also mask that off because you're not going to get a real good, cleanly masked print unless you mask both the print and the negative, in my opinion. So what I use to mask the negative is just simple, I use the removable Scotch tape, you don't need to have the removable for this stuff because basically I just put it on there once and I leave it there and just dispose of it all when I'm done with the negative. But what I want to do is I'm going to take that negative and invert it so I'm not on the emulsion side, and I want to use ruby lith. I use ruby lith for this. You can use deep red film of any sort, but Ulano makes ruby lith now, and that's my preferred method of doing this. So what I do is I cut out the ruby lith in large enough strips that I can go here and mask off the full negative. So what I'm going to do is go around and do that. And the reason that I do this, obviously, not only to mask things off, you think that you could just mask off the negative and therefore, make sure that you don't spill over the emulsion when you're spreading it on the paper, and just use the mask to block that out and not, so that it won't expose that portion of the paper and the emulsion. But it doesn't quite work that way. You always get a little bit of edging and fogging. So really, if you want a nice clean edge, you've really got to go with masking the paper and the negative. So that's one side. Now what I'm doing is I'm just staying right along the edge of the negative. I'm not bothering measuring out or anything like that. Now you want to be careful in putting this down as well and not stretching it when you're putting it on. You want it to lay nice and flat, because if you stretch it in any way, it will bend and you won't get a nice straight line. So down to my last one here. Now once I've done that, I like to go along and then just put one on across each corner, just to keep it in place. Anyway, so as you can see, now I have a nicely masked negative. All right, so next up is to mask the paper. So I'm going to leave the light table on when I do this, but I'm also going to need a pencil for this. So I'm going to grab a piece of paper here, so bigger negative, bigger sheet of paper. I've pre-cut this, and the room has been set to 40, I'm at about 48% humidity right now. I normally like to print around between 40-45% humidity and let my paper humidify in the room. It just helps with my coatings. So anyway, I like to place this on here so I can get a nice even layout of the print on the paper, or of the negative on the paper, so that the print will have nice edges. There, I've got that set, and then what I do is I take the pencil, and in the corners I make a dot, and I make another dot. I slide up to this corner, and I am going to make a dot there and one more in the final corner. They're all set correctly. Now I can turn off my light, set my negative aside. Now, next up, I'm going to take out my glasses for this part of it. Next up is to take the tape and mask the edges. Now what I'm going to do is use the low-tack artist tape for the first bit, and then I'm going to tape some wider strips of paper that I've cut. This is just plain old paper that I've cut, and those will go on, and I'll use the other tape to tape those onto this tape, and that helps me mask out the whole edges so I don't get anything with spillover. Now a lot of people have come on and they've made comments saying, why don't I just attach the paper before I attach the tape? Doesn't work out so well. So if you guys figure out a way to do that, have at it. I just am always a person that's consistent in my workflow. You know, it's kind of the thing I have to do to keep everything straight. So I just do it exactly the same way every time. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the tape and I'm putting it on the surface, and I'm putting it along my lines, but I'm actually putting it a little bit outside my lines so that actually my coated area will be just a fraction bigger than my masked area of my negative. Now it's okay to have that kind of spillover, and I clear my images really, really well, so you're not going to see that in the edge of the paper or in the edge of the print. But I do this just so that when I'm matching the negative up with the paper, I don't somehow miss a little bit of emulsion and then just have a dead area of the print. That's really annoying to me. So, once again, I coat it, I stick the tape on there so that you can see the dot, basically. That's about how far outside of it I do it. And when I'm doing it, I just I don't bend the paper, the tape, I don't stretch it on one side at all. I just let the tape go straight out, and it stays nicely in line without me having to run a ruler on it or anything like that. Especially added with the masking on the negative, I still get a nice straight line. So here I am down to my final side. So I've got that masked off nicely. So now I switch tapes. I come over to my regular Scotch tape, and now I'm going to take wider strips of paper and just put them on here like that, a little farther out, and then I can tape the tape directly to my initial masking tape there. And this is so if I get sloppy and I'm overcoating it, I don't get anything into the border of my print. So I keep a nice clean white border. Now again, another reason that I do this is I tend to be the frugal photographer. And Palladium is very expensive right now, and probably will be for the foreseeable future. So by making these nice, brushwork on the edges of my prints that show up like this, this on this small print is probably an extra $1.50 of Palladium. So for me, I just don't want to do that. On a big print like this, it might be $5. So that's me. I'm cheap, frugal. Anyway, here we go. So now I've got a really nice mask on this paper, and I'm ready to coat this. So head on over here with me to the other side of the darkroom, and I'll get this coated. Now, if you remember, in the last video, we were using 5 drops of solution, 5 drops of each of the ones of the solution to do the coating, and obviously we've got a much bigger piece of paper now, so we're going to be using more. I'm probably going to go with 20 drops of each just to be safe. I want my coating to be nice and even, and if I'm trying to stretch it, if I'm trying to stretch a smaller amount, a lot of times that gets me into trouble. So I'd rather have a little bit more than a little bit less. So let's get this counted out here. First my Palladium. Here we go, 20 drops. we're going to do 20 of the ferric oxalate. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10. All right, now, can't forget the tween. I'm going to use about 4 drops of the tween. All right, now let me wet my brush. I always like to use a wet brush, dabbed out a little bit so that it doesn't absorb the solution into my brush. It absorbs it into the paper. All right, here we go. I like to get this on here pretty quickly, but I also try not to be too sloppy because I don't want to spill it over the edges. Once I've got to the point where I'm sure I have my edges, I'll use a little bit extra there. Then I will just start to smooth everything out with nice long brush strokes. I'll go back this way. Now I'm pretty much just using the weight of the brush. There we go. Got a nice coating there. All right, so time to rinse out the brush, and while I'm doing that, I can let this settle in a little bit before I take off my mask. Okay. And once again, I don't put anything that's got any water on it over the top of the paper now, because I don't want to destroy the emulsion at all. Okay, so we've got that coated. I can now take off my mask. Now if you can see, I pull it off at a right angle as well, because that helps also in releasing it from the paper nicely. And as you can see, got a really nicely coated and nicely masked piece of paper here. Happy with that. Now what I'm going to do is take the hair dryer, and on cool setting, I'm just going to dry it out. Okay, now it's ready to go. What I'm going to do is set it aside here for a minute. I'm going to get the negative, and I'm going to put the two of them together, and we're going to put it into the print frame, so bear with me here. Now, as you can see, we need a much bigger print frame this time. I'm using my 16 by 20 print frame for this. So let's get that up and ready to go. Now, I am going to take and put the negative together with the print here. And once that's taken care of, now you can see that we're ready to go here. Now, I'm going to put this face down just like we did before. And seal this up. You want to flip it over and make sure everything looks good. And it does. Looks good on the paper. So now it's time to get it into the plate burner, and we have got to give it 9 minutes exposure time, just like we did the small proof print. So let's get to that. Make sure all my bulbs are burning in here. And they are. Let's get that in there, close it down, make sure we're at 9 minutes. All right, so stick with me. In 9 minutes, we'll be processing this print, and with any luck, it's going to be the final print, and it's going to be a beauty. So stick with me, and we'll get to this, all right? So now comes the moment of truth. Exposure is made. It's ready to go here. As you can see, there's a little bit of an image there. That's a good sign. So cross your fingers. Let's go here. going to use my potassium oxalate and just pour it on as fast as I can. So let's go here. Whoa. Yeah. Oh yeah. Wow. That's pretty much exactly what I want. Of course, I'll have to wait and clear it first and see from there, but it's looking spectacular. Looks like I might have had my mask a little bit off on the one side there, but it's not a big deal. It looks to me like the negative's perfect. So, I'm going to let that soak in here for a little bit. Now what happens is I have to clear out the unused palladium, and if the longer you leave it in the developer, which is very acidic, the more it helps to clear that out. And then what I'll do is I'll run it down the bath, the clearing baths, like any print, and then I'll wash it, and then I'll take it back out to the other room and show and tell. All right, this is great. Yeah, thanks for sticking with me on this. You can see a lot goes into making a really nice print, and I think we've done it. So yeah, again, we'll finish it out in a minute, so stick with me, all right? Well, here we go. At long last, final print is beautiful. I'm really happy with it. It's not quite dry yet. It's almost there, but it's good enough. I'm gonna put it in the dry mount press, flatten it out, and I think what I'm gonna do is measure it up and order a mat cut for it. Nice 8x mat, because this is a beautiful print. This is 30 years in the making, almost 30 years in the making. It's been that long ago that I shot the negative, and here they are right here, and you know, now we're here with the final print. So it's a beauty, and I'm really happy with it. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks to Patti, and yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting this thing matted and framed after all these years. So anyhow, that's how you do it. That's how we take an image all the way from a negative through digitizing it, making a digital negative, and then making the final print. And thanks for going through it with me, and I really appreciate you doing that. And if you enjoyed this, give me a thumbs up. Again, the first 2 episodes will be linked up here. Actually, they'll all 3 be linked up here by the time this comes out. I'm going to set this up as a complete playlist. So yeah, thanks a lot. I'm really pleased with it. So that's it. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.